Let's pull that up and talk about how dark and evil this stuff gets. We have this story from Fox News. Project Veritas's James O'Keefe speaks out after FBI raided home. This is an attack on the First Amendment. O'Keefe told Fox News' Sean Hannity that he was in a state of shock as FBI agents searched his apartment. Apparently, he's partially clothed. He says, I wake up to a pre-dawn raid, banging on my door. I went to my door to answer the door, and there were 10 FBI agents with a battering ram, white blinding lights. They turned me around, handcuffed me, threw me against the hallway. I was partially clothed in front of my neighbors. They confiscated my phone. They raided my apartment. On my phone were many of my reporters' notes, a lot of my sources unrelated to the story, and a lot of confidential donor information to our news organization. He says, I've heard the process is the punishment. I didn't really understand what that meant until this weekend. And Sean, I wouldn't wish this on any journalist. James O'Keefe does a really, really great job. Regardless of what you think about his politics, he is a guy who he posts videos of people saying things. He does undercover reporting, and you might not like it, but that's all he does. For the FBI to go after him, we can truly see the depravity and the evil that is in the establishment.
Not just that, Tim. I mean, in that interview, James O'Keefe detailed specifically how they were given this diary. They decided not to run with the story, and they handed it over to the authorities, and then he got raided. So what in the world is the FBI doing when they're allegedly going after this diary that was already handed over to the police? This is clear intimidation. This is clear trying to scare the crap out of independent journalists who are actually doing real muckraking journalism. But look what happens. The FBI, white on rice on James O'Keefe, Larry Nassar, Jeffrey Epstein, Harvey Weinstein, years ignoring the victims, ignoring children, ignoring women that were hurt in unspeakable ways that we can't even mention here. And 30 years, Jeffrey Epstein was able to do whatever he wanted with the FBI looking the other way. And now, now
let's talk about
James.
And let's talk about how the establishment media apparatus handles these stories. How did we find out about Epstein? It was James O'Keefe publishing leaked video of an ABC News reporter saying she had evidence and testimony on Epstein, and it was scuttled away by the media organizations. And it was James O'Keefe who did the hard work to break that story. And who's getting raided by the FBI? James O'Keefe. Who was ignored by the FBI? Epstein.
The victims, his victims.
Is crooked.
We're talking about thousands of children here. We're talking about the FBI broke into his safe where they had prominent people and politicians' names with videotapes. The FBI still has this in his possession. Epstein was hanging out with Bill Gates, was hanging out with billionaires, Bill Clinton, Kevin Spacey, all the biggest names in politics. He was hanging out. He had surveillance systems inside of his homes in almost every room. And the FBI has in their possession all of the tapes, all of the videos of very prominent people in compromising ways. Why haven't they done anything with that?
Can I just say the other thing about this whole story, the O'Keefe raid, that I think is just so unbelievably kind of tawdry, is the way that, obviously the reason they're doing it is because it's to do with Biden and his family and the diary of the daughter and so on. It's so kind of the banana republic, the president, kind of his family, there's an issue, there's a story, and it's already been published, and then they send the cops to harass the judge. I mean, it just feels like, and again, evil. This is exactly the opposite of, they constantly say, oh, well, Trump undermining democratic norms. How many times you heard all that stuff? I mean, what is this? Where you send the FBI in because the boss's daughter's been involved in something. I mean, it's just so embarrassing.
I think it's more evidence that the establishment is crooked. That
it protects itself.
Well, these are desperate actions by desperate people who are trying to hit anyone criticizing them. And when we look at Project Veritas, they have been releasing an onslaught of counter-narrative, whistleblowing information and documents and videos that have exposed a lot of the bull crap in our entire establishment, in our entire system. This is retribution. This is payback. This is them hitting the nail that stood up because they're a hammer. And once you're a hammer, the only thing you do is you look for nails. And everyone who speaks out against them, everyone who criticizes them, it's a nail. That's the larger messaging that we're getting from this larger raid. They want you afraid. They want to show you they're in power and that you should not speak out against them. But the opposite should be happening here. James O'Keefe was told, hey, this is an ongoing investigation. Don't even tell anyone this happened. Yeah. He went on Sean Hannity just a couple hours ago last night and broke the whole story wide open and talked about the details here that are extremely important.
But it's an interesting theme. I mean, you see it with the Rittenhouse story with this, and actually the other one I'd add to that list is what they did, that disgusting letter And calling parents domestic terrorists, from the National
Right.
School Board Association, which then within days the Justice Department endorsed and said, yeah, we're going to put the FBI onto parents protesting their kids' schools. There's absolutely no legal justification. That's totally, like I say, it's unconstitutional. It's got no business of the federal government.